Welcome to Grab Your Gear, Election 2024 here in what we like to call election headquarters.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, joined by Jack Windsor, who's with me every Tuesday here on the Grab Your Gear Network. Jack, of course, with the Windsor Report, the founder of the Windsor Report, and also host on 98.9 The Answer.
Yes.
And your podcast, also the Windsor Report.
The Windsor Report, yep.
Can be found on all the platforms. So
That's right.
We've done all this stuff. Okay, big day.
Yeah.
A lot happening. Let me throw a couple things at.
Sure.
We do a rundown ahead of time. I send Jack some information, and Isabella gets it day before, but I've changed a few things because I want to ask Jack about some things that have happened since we put that together. Okay, Joe Rogan endorses Donald Trump. Does it matter?
Yes. Joe Rogan has 17 million viewers, and I think Joe Rogan really is, he represents a cross-section of America. I mean, he has a lot of the MMA fans. He has folks who have followed him from, when he had a TV show. What was that called? I forget what it was called.
News Radio.
Was it News Radio? And then there was a...
Oh, he also had...
the Dare something.
Yeah, there's a Princess Bell. Do you remember his show? Fear Factor. Oh.
The Dare, the Fear
That's
Factor.
Right. That's right. Always good. Tinfoil Ted knows everything that's ever been produced on television and in theaters, so we should have asked him.
I think it matters, and I was telling my wife Whitney yesterday, look at what he's done. He had Donald Trump, he had J.D. Vance, and then today I saw the Elon Musk interview. And, to me, Joe Rogan represents a fair-minded person. I mean, he'll tell you he grew up a hippie. He's a California guy. And I think that what he does resonates with a segment of the population that Donald Trump needs to win this election.
Okay. Does the assassination of Peanut the Squirrel and Fred the Raccoon play into this?
Well, it's batshit crazy.
Just so people might know, there was do you call it an Instagram star named Peanut, who was a squirrel, who had a friend named Fred the Raccoon. I believe Fred took second wheel to Peanut after he became more of the star. Lived in a house in New York, the state of New York, with a couple who call themselves animal rescue people, and they had horses and rabbits and things like that. And three state agencies raided Peanut's home. The couple were forced to stay outside. They went through the house, asked if there were any cameras. So, I mean, this was like a regular raid. Took Peanut and Fred and euthanized both of them. I believe they said I believe one of the law enforcement people said that Peanut bit him, but whatever. Okay, and I'm laughing. I'm not laughing. I take this very seriously, but there's a part of me that wonders if stuff like this really does move people.
It's death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? Not one paper cut that's inflicted kills the person or the thing, but it's the culmination of all of them. And this to me is another one of those, you have one party that is all about government overreach. I've had conversations in the past 6 months, I don't know if you run into people like this, who are really concerned because they have a family garden or maybe a small family hobby farm. And the government doesn't want that. The government wants to be able to control all the means of food production. And you have Kamala Harris and Sherrod Brown in Ohio who want to implement price controls. I mean, this is authoritarianism. And, and today, depending on where you are, the Department of Justice is out in force at over 80 election sites around America. And so, to me, this is just one of those other paper cuts where if people are really paying attention, they're going, I don't think I'm all in for this.
J.D. Vance actually talked about it, I believe, in a speech, referenced it.
Did he really?
The incident. So Peanut the Squirrel, rest in peace. Fred the Raccoon. Speaking of just locally, we're in Ohio. That's where we are. Sherrod Brown is taking on Bernie Moreno. Obviously, Sherrod Brown's been in office since the 70s, I guess. If we start with
before I was alive.
His career at the state level and then on up through. Running against Bernie Moreno in Ohio, which is listed as one of the 4 to 6 races being looked at nationally. Where do you think that one sits?
So we sponsored a poll with Trafalgar, the Ohio Press Network did a week ago, and that poll showed Trump up 6.1 and Bernie Moreno down 0.8, so under a point, which is pretty significant a week out from Election Day because Sherrod Brown has one of the most durable brands in Ohio political history. There's no bones about it.
Okay.
Bernie Moreno is a political outsider, but he is endorsed by Donald Trump. Yesterday, though, Emerson College released a poll that showed Trump up 12 in Ohio and Marino up 3 on Sherrod Brown. So many pollsters tell me that it's all going to come down to turnout. But if Bernie truly is up 3 with Trump at the top of the ticket, I think tonight might be Sherrod Brown's retirement party.
Another big thing is issue 1, which explain that a little bit to people.
Issue 1 is being pitched as an anti-gerrymandering amendment. It is not. In fact, it would enshrine gerrymandering into the Constitution because it would make the key component what's called proportionality. And so a group of people would gerrymander maps to favor one political party over the other. The big bugaboo about all of this is that this amendment would take away the Ohio Redistricting Commission that was created over 2 constitutional amendments that Ohioans approved by 70% or more, both instances. By the way, that system isn't perfect, but doing issue 1 would be like throwing the baby out with the bathwater or cutting off your nose to spite your face. But the big bugaboo is instead of the Ohio Redistricting Commission that is comprised of elected office holders, there would be a commission that would be handpicked of 15 people. So Ohioans, if this passes, would never have the opportunity to vote in people who draw their maps or get rid of them. And 2 other things, you look at how it's funded. This thing is funded by the progressive left. About $40 million is bankrolling the supportive issue 1. And I've talked previously about in Michigan, a similar scheme there. The output was ruled unconstitutional by a 3-panel court because it took away black voters' rights. So this, to me, is probably the tightest contest in Ohio. If you'd have asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have told you that I think it goes down 10 points. I think there's a chance that issue 1 fails in Ohio tonight.
Okay. Let's talk about Trump and Harris. Obviously, the big election today, national election. People, talking about democracy's over or dictatorship starts. What's your gut feel?
My gut feel is confusion
Okay.
because I'm so far in the weeds on this. Watching this contest is like me watching an Ohio State football game. I'm just not impartial. But Trump is up in battleground states 0.8, according to Real Clear Politics. Kamala Harris is up 0.1 in the head-to-head on national polling. But here's what I think is telling. The Real Clear betting odds have Trump 59.2 to Harris 39.3.
And
that, to me, is the deciding factor.
Here on Grab Your Gear, of course, we work a lot with people in the merit shop work field, right? People who are not necessarily affiliated with organized labor, get up every day, go to work, plumbers, pipe fitters, electricians, all that. If you look at Pennsylvania and Michigan,
Those are the 2.
you look at the union worker, who's a lot of the people, they would be like the people that we connect with, the actual workers, have disconnected, at least ideologically on this election, with their leadership. And we started to notice that over the course of a year as we've worked here at the Merit Shop Alliance and the Grab Your Gear Network, that there's an ideology that is driven by people who run organized labor and places like that. And then there's the workforce who are trying to make a living and go to work. And so steel workers in Pennsylvania, it appears, said tariffs against foreign steel is all we need. That preserves our, I'm just telling you what I saw, watched. Whether that is true or not, that's what they believe. The other part though, and I thought I know everybody's looking at Pennsylvania, but I looked at Michigan. That EV mandate and what the UAW negotiated with the government's progging about really eliminating gas-powered vehicles eliminates a lot of auto workers.
Yes.
And to me, I don't know the impact, I don't know the number, but it just feels, again, this is a feel, that the auto workers are saying, there's just no way in hell. Because that's not a real hard thing for them to figure out. It's like, okay, I want tariffs. That means I'll produce more steel. My job will be preserved. EV mandates mean I won't be making, automobiles fueled by gasoline and electricity, blah, blah, blah. It just feels like that's an underlining group that I think could play. Everybody's talking about minorities and Latinos and all that. I think the detached union worker might play a lot in those 2 states.
Yeah, that is one of those scenarios where you go, It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
And I think that that resonates with a lot of people, whether you're Amish in Pennsylvania or an auto worker in Michigan. At the end of the day, if your job security is at risk, if your paycheck doesn't go as far as it did 4 years ago, I think that's a slam dunk vote. Kamala Harris has spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania. I think she's going to lose that state tonight. It has been flipped in terms of the number of registered voters over the past 4 years.
Yeah, and Van Jones is one of the people that does speak truth, and I've noticed he says that in Philadelphia they're having a problem getting people out to vote.
They are. Well, I don't know what you get fired up about. What is there to be enthusiastic about? You have a woman who was one of the most unpopular vice presidents in the history of this country, and was the laughing stock. Literally, there were memes made about her. And then all of a sudden, the elites decide that they're going to swap out Joe Biden and put her in that seat. And the press does its thing. And this is where I think people are catching on. Well, wait a minute. A year ago, she was a laughing stock. And now you're telling us that it's joy and things are going to be great.
Well, we've gone through a number of cycles. We went from joy to hate to,
But last night, the closing argument again was she tried to say
joy?
This is joy. But part of me, going back to answer your question, because I did a really terrible job, I almost acted like a politician, Joe. I think Trump could win. I don't want to say a landslide, but I think he could win convincingly. I think we could know some things by 11 or 12 o'clock tonight that really signal where this election's going to go. I think there are going to be some battleground states. They're already prepping us for that. Arizona, Pennsylvania, maybe even Nevada. They're going to try to slow roll it to get the final count. So that if there is a margin that Democrats can make up, they're going to try to do that. But I think Trump could win this convincingly.
Republicans are a little quicker on the ground than they've been in the past. They tried to keep Republican poll watchers out of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia this morning. They immediately had people on the ground, and that was resolved within a half hour, which also you wonder, why do you want to restrict your poll workers? One last thing of Kamala Harris. I deep down, the agencies that went and arrested Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon are like the people she represents. She would have been the one sending the cops.
100%.
Yeah, and she kind of represents the man in a lot of ways that are. We have so many rules, we have so many regulations, we have so many things in our lives now driven by bureaucrats. She kind of, to me, represents a big part of that.
She does. I had a conversation last night. My grandpa was a union president, and he was a Kennedy Democrat. And I think that there was this air about the Democratic Party back in that day where they were truly felt they were for the working man.
Yep.
But there was an also, I want to stick it to the man kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Well, the Democratic Party represents the man now. I mean, they are.
Well, they're the elite man.
They're the elite man.
Yeah, I mean,
and so,
not just the man, but the real wealthy man.
The real wealthy man, and the people who are, I mean, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit trail, but let's go back all the way to January 6th, mm-hmm. where we know that people have been in prison and they've been denied their constitutional right to a speedy trial. We know that the Department of Justice interceded and intervened in ways that are illegal. People have been caught. The mainstream press doesn't want to talk about it. But again, this is that authoritarianism that Kamala Harris and the progressive left represent. And I think today could be the beginning of a movement that isn't just the Republican Party, isn't just the MAGA movement. It's the American people recognizing we don't want to be a part of that new world order, that globalist order. And I think today we're going to get a good glimpse into whether or not Americans are sick of it.
I think we're kind of at a point too where you think about the economic bailout. Remember, when the economy, the people who caused it got bailed out. The people who suffered had no voice. The mm-hmm. people whose pensions were destroyed and all that. I mean, I think that's kind of where we are right now, where it feels like that's a split. Like this group that takes care of themselves and then the rest of us. I want to talk a little bit about unforced errors that I saw. I think both Trump and Harris had significant unforced errors. And I want to just get your thoughts on it. I think Trump's unforced error is he didn't use Nikki Haley. I think Harris's unforced error is she didn't pick Josh Shapiro.
I think, first of all, Nikki Haley came out, I think, ultimately yesterday on X and posted
had a big
something.
Wall Street Journal article. She did an editorial, yes.
Posted something that essentially said it's a no-brainer. I mean, when
Yeah.
you're looking at all of these issues that matter, the economy, the border, regulations, taxes, all of it, security, there's a clear winner, and that's Donald Trump. I think if he would have utilized her in the campaign, he probably would have been able to pull over more of what we'd call those soft Republicans or undecided independents. I will never understand Kamala Harris's decision to pick Tim Walz.
It was Israel.
I mean,
It was Israel.
That has to be it, because Josh Shapiro is a very popular governor.
He's also very smart. He would have been smarter than her, I think.
Yeah, well, and he would have been a guy that would have, at least half of the ticket would have been okay on camera. Now you have two people who, could you imagine Tim Walz or Kamala Harris sitting down for a 3-hour interview on the podcast with Joe Rogan? It would have been, Whitney and I talked about this, it would have been the most, if you ever watched The Office way back in the day, remember those like awkward moments where they paused and looked at each other? To me, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, that's what that whole interview would have been like. With Shapiro, you have somebody who can actually talk policy, who can relate with voters. And I think Tim Walz was the worst pick that she could have made.
I know it's small, but when he did the game with AOC, and he said she called a pick six, that's when you go, did you really coach football?
I mean,
That's, you know what I mean? It's good. Do you really?
Between the, called the pick six and, him fiddling with the gun when he was on the fake hunt.
Yeah, when he put the butt of the gun in his crotch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
in fairness,
in fairness, Tinfoil Ted and I were talking about it. He said he loads his weapon that way.
But Ted gets his weapon loaded. Tim Walz couldn't get his weapon loaded, and had it, brand spanking new gear on. I mean, his purpose is so blatantly obvious. I think it's off-putting. I mean, because they're trying to attract guys like us, Midwestern.
Yeah, but
dudes.
he says things like, sometimes I'm just an idiot, an knucklehead. It's like, that's not a lot of confidence, right? I mean, are you going to accidentally tell Xi Jinping to go screw himself?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just lose my temper.
Can you imagine the jazz hands with Xi Jinping and?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, and now tomorrow we're going to do a remote hookup if we could. So I don't know where you're going to be, but we want to, just so people know, tomorrow morning we're going to do a short podcast to kind of see where things are. So, before we get there, I want to ask you where you think things are going and what we'll be talking about tomorrow. So let me ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
How quickly do you think results will start coming in battleground states? And I mention that because, back to Josh Shapiro, made a pretty big commitment that he goes, we're going to stay counting, we're not going to shut down, we're going to get it out. I mean, committed to getting this thing in. Wisconsin, the same way. I saw that they are very committed to getting their count in. Michigan, not sure what happens there. But I know a lot's going to hinge on those three. I think conventional wisdom says North Carolina and Georgia are going Trump. I think that's what people believe. Do you think tomorrow morning when we do our little remote, we'll be waiting on results from any of those states?
I think we'll be waiting on results, but I think we will have a pretty clear indication. I think that there are going to be at least one or two states that try to slow roll it, but who knows? I mean, I'm still of the mindset that Trump might do something crazy like win New Mexico or Virginia. I'm not sure yet, but to me, here's what I'm going to say. The state of Ohio does it really well. I don't agree with how our Secretary of State does everything, but Frank LaRose does a good job on several levels. Number one, they actually count the early vote first.
Yes.
And then they come in with the election day vote. So in Ohio tonight, by about 8 or 8:30, we're going to know who voted early.
Same with
and what's
Indiana.
that margin.
I mean, a lot of those, yeah.
Yeah. So when you start looking at those numbers in places like Indiana and Ohio early, if Trump's out to a pretty significant lead, and if people like Bernie Moreno are winning, that to me says Trump's going to win this election.
See, I'm looking at New Hampshire.
Oh, where the 6 people voted that one?
I'm looking at that, but I'm also looking at the margin.
Okay.
Because New Hampshire should be of like a 4 point win for Kamala Harris. If it's closer, you just kind of go, okay, maybe people are moving the other side.
What do you think? What's your gut tell you?
See, intellectually it tells me Trump probably wins the electoral vote and
The popular.
Yeah, I mean, but I go back to who's voting, right? Mm-hmm. And who's motivated. Mm-hmm. And I look at the ground game as much more organized than it was before. The legal game is much more organized.
Way.
But Tinfoil Ted and I were talking about this in the break room. My head tells me Trump, my heart tells me there's something going to happen. And I just can't get away from the fact that there's a group of people out there on the left that just absolutely will not allow this to happen in their brain. And I just don't know what to expect. And I don't mean to be an alarmist. I don't mean to be, but something just, I mean, the Trump derangement thing is real, right? And there's going to be
Shenanigans.
I just don't believe there won't be shenanigans.
Well, I grew up a Cleveland Browns fan.
Yeah, me too.
And we had the drive and the fumble.
Yes, I
and
lived it.
Right, and so there's always going to be a part of me in big times like this that you go, is there going to be a fumble? Is there going to be a late drive? Is something going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if you paid attention in 2020, you kind of go, what are they really going to do? And on the way in today, I was listening to an ABC News report, and the reporter couldn't have been any more biased. It was disgusting. It was gross. And I just kind of went, they're gonna take this thing all the way to the mat, and if there is a lever to pull or a thread to pull, the press is going to do it. And so,
I think
all
the
hands
press
are on
will.
deck for
I
it.
think the press is a co-conspirator.
Yeah,
I think
would agree.
See, there's another part of me, having lived in newsrooms and stuff, that knows there's a real self-importance from local media all the way up. I mean, from the morons who report, on the, school board meeting. They're not morons, but I mean, people who, there's a self-importance of people in media. If Trump were to win by a comfortable margin, it almost makes them irrelevant. And I think that will be a meltdown that will be like never seen before. Because they will have a hard time wondering why Meet the Press and, Face the Nation and all of the institutional messaging platforms, 60 Minutes, how they did not influence, or how they did not have the cojones to at least shape opinion to make it close. It's just that part of that. I'm saying it bad. I'm saying it poorly, but
No,
it's like they're going to melt down if it's even a significant win.
I was looking for something that I wrote yesterday, because you're hitting on something that was really in my brain, and I'll just kind of go from memory on it. But this election, regardless of who wins the White House, regardless of who wins U.S. Senate in Ohio, regardless of issue 1, what I've been reminded of again, and I think it's lesser this time, the effect of it. But what I've been reminded of again is the machine works to control the outcome.
Yep.
And the machine works against voters and the republic. And so, for me, and I know the reason you do what you do, the reason I do what I do with the Ohio Press Network and with the daily broadcast of the Windsor Report, is that, I've committed the rest of my professional career to literally changing the gears. The press is a cog in the machine. And that's what I've seen time and time again and over, to your point earlier about...
Well, that's right. Grab Your Gear was invented because the people who started this said, our people who work in trades and construction can't get information that's accurate.
Anywhere.
I mean, so
Yeah.
we're on the same kind of path there.
So I think that there is a realization. I mean, if you work for one of these major outlets, and tomorrow happens, and let's say Trump has a 1980 style win. I don't think that's going to happen, but he could win convincingly. He could lose. But if he wins convincingly, what's tomorrow like for those talking heads? You get up, you look in the mirror, and you go, we made January 6th something that it wasn't. We beat the drum of the Russia collusion hoax for 4 years. We were all in on the lawfare. We said J.D. Vance was unqualified, and by the way, he looks more qualified than anybody every single day he opens his mouth. And you said that masks were and vaccines were safe and effective. You're irrelevant. You're completely irrelevant, and I think you're right. I think there will be a meltdown.
Which then leads me to they aren't going to let it happen. That's right, the unrest or whatever.
What does that look like?
I don't know. I don't know if it's civil unrest. I don't know if it's all of the polling places accidentally shut down. I don't know if the grid goes out.
Go vote, hurry.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, I just don't. Look, you also have the intelligence community.
That's
that-
what scares the hell out of me.
That, you know, if you do any kind of historical research on things like the CIA and some of the things they've done to turn elections in other countries, it just, and again, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to throw this out there and not have it. Just when you get to know these people, and I've worked with them, they can't be wrong, and this is their whole existence. They aren't really faith-based people.
No.
They have miserable home lives. Their existence is wrapped up in who they feel they are through information and a platform in media or whatever.
So do you think then the Department of Justice being on location at 80
Yeah,
plus
it could be.
places throughout the country, that could be where
The only thing I think we got
shenanigans
going for
occur?
us is that we're more aware of it.
Yeah.
Which,
But I'm concerned about the intelligence community because,
look,
I'll say what,
if anything really bizarre happens between now and the close of polls, somebody did it on purpose.
on purpose.
So there are no coincidences that will happen today.
And so let me just take that and run with it for a second. I knew Kamala was in trouble when, was it Bucks County? We talked about this last time. When the early votes started rolling in, it didn't look good. They had to extend the deadline, remember?
Yeah, saw
and
it.
so then, the Republicans got boots on the ground and I think took care of anything that could have been shenanigans there. But I don't know how much of that is baked in. I don't know how many schemes they have planned. I think we'll see some of them play out. My hope is that they all get quashed, but we're going to find out a lot in the next 24 hours.
And all I remember is 4 years ago, I went to bed with Donald Trump in the lead and I woke up and he'd lost.
I don't think the American people will tolerate that again.
Yeah. So, all right. So tomorrow we will do a recap. We will do it from whatever location you're going to Cleveland potentially.
going to Cleveland.
You
I'll
take your
be-
computer. We can
Yep.
send you a link. We'll talk. Maybe 9 o'clock tomorrow. See where we are. Your thought is, if we're going to know today, when will we know by?
I think we'll know by 11,
Okay, 11 or midnight somewhere.
somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that means the West will start closing polls, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So we'll know that. If there's going to be any shenanigans, what do you think to look for?
I think I don't know. I mean, the real answer is I don't know. I would suspect, if I'm just kind of connecting the dots, that there's going to be an outage somewhere, or the machine's down. We're going to have to do paper ballots, and you know what? We're going to have to extend this deadline. I think if you start seeing
Because that's what
that-
happened in Maricopa County remember, the machines went down.
Yep. I think if you start seeing that in Maricopa, in Philadelphia, somewhere in Michigan, I think alarm bells should go off in your head, and I think you should really pay attention to those areas.
Okay. Well, that's it for today. We don't mean to be conspiracy theorists. This is just what we feel. And
I hope I'm wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too, and I hope by midnight we know who the next president is. I am Joe, and for Jack, we will be back with you tomorrow with kind of a recap of what goes on today. Happy election. Go out and vote. Hope everybody has voted. This is the Grab Your Gear Network, and we will see you tomorrow.